And here's Felissa, by the way.
Oh my God.
Holy, are you kidding me? Oh my God.
He wants to know about our story.
Oh,
it's a
is
good
an
story.
it is an
Hi.
honor. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Christian Hanahar. I've been doing YouTube since 2012, and if you'd have told me back then one day I'm gonna have the guy who basically provided the soundtrack to my childhood, I would have said you're crazy. But lo and behold, I've got the man Deron Miller here today with me. Deron, first of all, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic.
I got to ask you, Deron. I know obviously you were a Pennsylvania boy, right? That's where you're from.
I'm
How
from
long
the
have you?
East Coast.
Yeah.
I was born in Chester, Pennsylvania, on May 21st, 1976, and Chester, Pennsylvania, has been voted the worst town or city in the entire United States of America.
Did you contribute to that?
Yeah, I have a little bit, but I used to live in God, I can't even remember, Haddon Heights or something, and then moved to Marlton, New Jersey, and then before my sophomore year in high school, I ended up in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
So Deron, like I was telling you beforehand, big fan of yours. I'm on YouTube one day, and of course I'm doing what every fan of yours does, looking up how to play the song, because obviously I'm not the greatest in the world. You're the king, but I'm looking up how to play 96 Quite Bitter Bings, and I see you do a video, and I click on it, and I said, is that a Silent Night? Is that a Black Christmas poster behind him? Whoa. And then the name of the channel threw me off. It was Felissa Miller. And I was like, I know that I've seen Deron with a guitar that has Angela on it. And I'm thinking, nah, just a coincidence.
Right.
But I want to ask, obviously you are a massive horror fan.
Yes.
Where does this start for you?
Well, people that are young or maybe even a little bit younger than me might not remember that if you didn't have cable television, and even if you did back then, you kind of had to wait for movies to come on TV. If you wanted to watch them, you couldn't just choose whatever you wanted to watch like you could now. So I remember Channel 17 used to have like Friday night movies and stuff like that, and horror just completely scared me, which is why I got interested in it. I always used to get really nervous, like when Friday the 13th would come on, or Halloween, or something like that. There was even that movie Roller Coaster, because I'm such a huge fan of roller coasters. I love to go on roller coasters, and that movie scared me. So when Friday the 13th came on, I used to talk in school. I used to talk to everybody how I'd seen it. It was no big deal, but I didn't. I was full of shit. So when it came on TV, I used to I had this little black and white TV set, and I would turn it on, and then no volume, and then I would turn it up a little bit. Like if there was a scene in it that wasn't scary, I would turn it up and listen. And then if something started to get scary, I would turn it down and look away, like I was such a little pussy about it. And then we started renting movies. Like my friends and I would start renting movies, all the Friday the 13th, usually it was Friday the 13th. And I remember renting the final chapter and couldn't watch it. I was had a blanket over my head while my friend was sitting at the front of the TV like this, ha! And I just remember being like, I love this, but I can't take it. It's it's scaring the shit out of me. And then one day, it might have been almost overnight, because people say horror movies give them nightmares. They never gave me nightmares because I wasn't able to fall asleep after watching one. So it wasn't like I had nightmares. It was just that I got insomnia every time I watched one, and it usually took 2 weeks to get over it. So it seemed like really quickly, they just didn't bother me anymore. So I started to buy them back when VHS tapes were really expensive. And when you went to rent a videotape at a video store, they would ask you how old you were, and they would deny you if you were under 17. Well, I was 12, going around to like Kmart and all these stores that had movies on sale. And when you used to buy the movies for like $29.95, they wouldn't ask you what your age was. So I would start buying them. And I remember I bought Friday the 13th Part 3, and I just loved it. And I started to buy Halloween and all those movies. And the only one that still bugs me in a really disturbing way is Silent Night, Deadly Night. I'm sure you're familiar with that one.
I am.
I got the unrated version on cassette, and it to this day it just gets under my skin. I think it's really, really in bad taste, even though I love things that are in bad taste, but I think that movie kind of goes over the line a little bit. But I love it. I love the movie. I just don't watch it too much because of the rape scenes, and it's kind of depressing. And I actually got to meet Robert Brian Wilson, who plays Billy, that's Killer Santa Claus in the movie, and we talked about it, and it's just funny because we kind of felt the same way about it, like how it just kind of crossed the line a little bit, and he doesn't let his kids watch it or anything like that. And so, but I still think it's a classic. I have the movie poster. I saw Black Christmas, got it from Suncoast Video, which was a video store at the mall.
How expensive was that tape?
Black Christmas was $19.95.
Oh, okay, because I know Suncoast. I'm 29, but I remember I experienced a little bit of Suncoast, and I was like, Jesus, man! Even back then, these tapes were expensive. It seemed like. I mean, I remember there was yeah.
But I had no idea about that movie for so long. So once it was common to purchase VHS tapes, I had already amassed a huge collection. So Black Christmas ended up being one of my favorite movies. It's so fucking creepy, and it has the best ending. And the remakes they have done of it are total shit. So
I like you even more now.
The original. Yeah, I love Margot Kidder. I love Olivia Hussey and John Saxon, and everybody did so good in that movie. I like the humor. I like the environment. Like, it was shot in Canada, so there's a lot of cool architecture, and it just has the perfect vibe, you know. And I could watch it over and over. I love it. So then me and my friends started getting interested in, when we found out at Suncoast there used to be a $9.99 section, and there would be all these horror movies and slasher films that we never heard of. So I started to buy those because I wondered why I hadn't heard of them. And that's when Don't Go in the Woods came into the picture, and The Forest, and Crazy Fat Ethel. And sorry about that. And
that's all right.
I mean, I started to become obsessed with pretty much everything. I would laugh. I thought Don't Go in the Woods was the funniest movie ever made. And the rest is history. And Sleepway Camp as well was on the $9.99 rack, but I actually got Sleepway Camp at Kmart.
So of course people know you from CKY, but one thing I read that was so cool was you initially named the band Don't Dismember. Was it Don't Dismember Mama, which was a 1970s horror film that you found back in the day?
It was I Dismember Mama.
I Dismember Mama.
Movie I picked up. Yeah, I found the big box version. You totally disappeared now. There you are.
Okay, I'm back. So you rented this movie back in the day, and I read that you didn't like the movie at all, but you loved the name, right?
I love the name. I hated the movie.
I actually saw that movie, and it was really disturbing. I just remember a scene with a guy telling the woman to undress, and there's like no music, and the lighting's bad. Where do you find a movie like that back in the day? Because I wanted to ask you this. I'm assuming you spent a lot of time in the rental stores, probably pre-Blockbuster too, right?
Oh yeah, I remember when Blockbuster first started, they used to have a very wide selection until they ended up near the end of their days just having like 35 copies of Batman and the Castaway or something, and then it just became a shit store. But there was a lot of mom and pop VHS stores where you know, just like any kid, I'd look at the box, and if there was a guy with a knife, I'd rent it.
So you talked a little bit ago about collecting tapes is in physical media. Is that something that's still important to you? Because obviously you could look behind me and see, you know, I'm not anti-streaming, but I love my physical media because, you know, Deron, we're living in a world today where, you know, somebody could reevaluate some of these films and start a, you know, cancel it thing, and you know, you may not ever see, you know, some of these films on TV anymore. So physical media is pretty important to me. You look like you've got a lot to say about that. Please, let me hear you.
Well, I am a collector of so many things. I collect old cassette tapes. I collect VHS tapes still. I still have most of them. I have about 2,000 DVDs and Blu-rays. And just like you said, there are some movies and things that have gotten canceled. Like Chris Lilly is one of my favorite comedians from Australia, and a lot of his shows, because of the context of the material that has since been part of the cancel culture, you can't watch them anymore. So I do believe that physical movie formats are important, because you're right. At any time, someone can delete something you love from streaming. So yeah, that scares the shit out of me.
So Deron, how important was I'm assuming in the 80s is really when you consumed all of this horror. Is that your favorite decade, or looking back, is it more about the 70s? Because me personally, I think that the 70s had some of the most amazing films ever that may not ever be top, but in terms of like just a whole, I eat up the 80s, all of it. But I also I love some of today's era. I love the A24 movies and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on, you know, basically the retro stuff? Because it seems like now, Deron, 80s horror is just bigger than ever. It just won't die. What do you think the reason for that is, and what do you think is the greatest era of horror that we've experienced so far?
I'd say late 70s to 1984, you know, the big slasher craze. There are some classics in the 90s, but I think the 90s, like I think Scream was brilliant. I didn't think that the 90s was very good to Friday the 13th and Halloween sequels. I think that some of those sequels are just garbage. But now it seems like they don't really do the straight up slasher thing anymore. And I can't watch a movie that has any kind of supernatural vibe to it, because I'm only ever afraid, or usually don't get scared of horror movies. I like to watch just to jump maybe sometimes, but I don't get scared or nervous or anxious about things that can't really happen. So like the new Halloween movie in 2018, I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about that, but I love that movie, and I can't wait for the sequel.
Wow, that was interesting. Yeah, because that, man, it seems like you know, in today's world, especially because Deron, I don't know how often you watch, you know, YouTube horror movie reviews or anything, but everybody is a critic today. I mean, everybody can sit on their couch and do videos and just trash every movie. At the end of the day, Deron, I'm happy that we're still getting some Halloween films. I'm so glad that John is doing the music. And in terms of music, the soundtracks back then were some of the most amazing things. Some of the soundtracks, like Day of the Dead, is one of my favorite soundtracks. And obviously Manfredini with all the Friday the 13th. How important was that? Do you have any standout favorites from that time too?
I have almost every single soundtrack on vinyl and CD that you could possibly think of. Aside from John Carpenter, I have the soundtrack to Don't Go in the Woods on vinyl that was beautifully packaged. It's got posters inside. It's a clear red splatter vinyl. It's got a really thick cardboard cover. It's got a bunch of notes and different things inside of it. And they only made 30 copies because the pressing plant had an issue.
Oh,
I
boy.
got my hands on copy number 29. So you can imagine that if I was going to go that far to find that, which is a very strange soundtrack, I'm going to go and get I love Christopher Young. I love his score to Flowers in the Attic, which is a pretty disturbing movie. Wasn't so good, but the premise is very disturbing and actually is possible. So that creeped me out a little bit. I saw it in the movie theater. I have the soundtrack to Madman, which is one of my favorite slasher films. I have all of the Waxwork. I have all of the Waxwork vinyls from Friday the 13th. At Trick or Treat, I have My Bloody Valentine. I have, God, you name it, all the Halloween stuff, the old 80s vinyl of Halloween, the Maurice Ray band releases that.
Right.
Even Halloween 5, I think they got, just as vinyl was dying out, they actually had a copy of Halloween 5 printed right before vinyl was shoved out of record stores, and I even have 3 of those. So I'm quite a collector. I have doubles of mostly everything that I love, and I don't think you could name a slasher film that I don't have the soundtrack for.
That's incredible, Deron. I was watching. I think it was on Facebook. You did a live stream, and you were jamming guitar, talking to the fans, and you had this gorgeous wall of vinyl behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, because I've got a cassette tape of the Halloween 5, and what's so great about that is it's got the original soundtrack from Alan, but it's got all the songs, the Romeo, and all that on there. And I was blown away because, Deron, I have looked for that.
Dancing on Midnight.
White Sister, great band. And I'm looking at the background, and I was like, this son of a gun has Halloween 5 on vinyl. Where do you find? Is this stuff that you find on the road, or is this eBay purchases? How do you amass the majority of your collection? Obviously, besides the Waxwork record stuff, because we know we order those online. How do you go about getting that stuff and finding that stuff?
Well, what happened was when vinyl was dying out, I refused to let it go. So there were record stores in New Jersey, like Sound Odyssey was my favorite. They had really obscure metal and soundtrack stuff. Then there was We 3 Records that was kind of more mainstream. So if I wanted anything like an import or anything that was obscure, I knew Sound Odyssey would have it. So it was close to my birthday or something, and I had just I had just gone into the record store, and I got Halloween 2 and Halloween 5 were in stock. And very quickly after Halloween 5 came out, it got deleted. So I think that there was probably less than 1,000 copies made. And so, because 89, records were pretty much done by 89. Trying to find a US copy of that is almost impossible. And the other 2 that I have, because I beat up the other one a little bit, not appreciating that eventually it was going to be, a collector's item. But I don't know if you can still do this, but Amazon used to let you shop their other online stores in different countries. So I went on Amazon.uk, and they had a reissue of Halloween 5, and I bought them all the ones they had, which ended up being 2 copies. They only had 2 copies, and they cost me a fortune, but they came in the mail, and I didn't open them. And I was disappointed that the re-release of Halloween 5 does not have the songs from the movie, even though I never really liked the songs too much, but it just seems like you can't put that soundtrack out without those songs. And I have 2 copies of the cassette. Actually, give me a second, because I want to show you some stuff.
Please go ahead.
I have my I put most of my cassette tapes in the garage, but this is my soundtrack collection. If you could see, this is Friday the 13th, the series on cassette. Probably one of the most expensive tapes I have is Garbage Pail Kids movie on cassette, still sealed in the wrapping.
Oh wow!
But
amazing.
If we're talking horror, let's see here. All right. Halloween, still wrapped.
Deron.
Halloween 2, still.
Deron. Oh my God.
Halloween 3 still wrapped.
Oh my God!
I got quite a few copies of every single one. This other Halloween 3 is still sealed. This is a brand new Halloween 4. I mean, it's endless here. Here's
Good Lord.
a brand new Halloween 5 and the original cassette release of the Halloween soundtrack with
I recognize that.
a silver sticker and Jesus. Yet another Halloween 5 still in the packaging. Another Halloween, and I have a bunch of Halloween 2s.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm dead serious about this shit. Yeah, there's a bunch.
I'm blown away.
More, I mean, God. Yeah, I have Christ. 2 more Halloween 5s.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm no novice here. I'm not a novice. Not just cassettes. It's also CDs. I have an overabundance of multiple copies of CDs. I'm pretty much OCD. I hoard things, but the things I hoard are valuable. So I have all the CDs still brand new. I have the vinyl brand new. Just everything. If I sold my record collection and cassette collection, I'd probably be able to put all 3 of my kids in college.
Deron, of course, we've got more things to talk about, but I've got to ask you this. Have you ever thought about having your own YouTube channel and showing this stuff off in videos? Because there is a huge online, like, I do this. I do YouTube. I mean, I have a full-time job, but I make a pretty good little bit of money doing these videos, and people love to see collections and things you have. Have you ever thought about getting into that at all?
Well, technology, as you've probably noticed tonight, scares me. I don't know how to, like, even your setup, look how much clearer your picture is than mine. I don't have the microphone. I wouldn't know how to. I have wanted to set up a podcast, but I think I need to be educated and kind of walk through it. But I'm afraid of the expenses. I'm afraid of not having the time. I'm afraid of not being able to get the amount of viewers that I would want to make it kind of worth it. So I'm just so busy with music and my band that could be something that might come later. Because I know as YouTubers, it's very hard to get your name out there, and being on YouTube, I constantly see, please click the subscribe button, and I just have a hard time with, like, asking people for, support if they don't automatically give it.
You're a humble man. That's all I'll say.
Like that. People have asked me to join that celebrity phone call list. I don't forget what it's called. Cameo or something. Yeah, and I don't understand why I would ever charge someone to talk to me. I just think that's so weird. It's like almost prostitution in a way.
I'll reserve my own judgment on that. So, if there's ever anything, and if you ever decide to look into this kind of stuff, I am a simple guy too. I don't like to spend money. I could always help you, but let's get this moving forward. So, I just want to get into this. Okay. I know that my viewers are probably chomping at the bit to hear this story. And if you don't mind, I just want to share my 2 cents worth of how I came to this point of dying to interview you. So,
okay.
I remember, I know that obviously we've established now that I've figured out you're a huge horror fan. And, one day I'm watching the Joe Bob Briggs show, and sure enough, it's for Victor Crowley, and your beautiful wife is on there, and Joe Bob is asking her about, her husband. And at first she wasn't saying your name, and I was putting two and two together. So I have to find this DVD somewhere. I finally find this extremely out of print Return to Sleepway Camp DVD. Sure enough, I pull up the bonus features, And my jaw drops when I see a 2003 Deron
I
Miller
remember.
meeting Felissa Rose and the story
Mm-hmm.
she told. It's so surreal to watch this. I am dying to know your side of how we got to that day of you meeting Felissa and what it turned into. Start at whatever point of the story you would like to. Go back as far as you would like to. The floor is yours, Deron.
Okay, I'm gonna make a little preemptive statement here that might sound a little arrogant, but I have gotten everything in my life that I ever went for. There isn't anything. I have further goals to accomplish, and I know that I'm going to succeed. I don't have unrealistic goals, but I do insinuate myself into situations, and it always works. I do it very slyly, and I always have. When I was 12, I was really badly bullied in my elementary school and middle school. And when I got my hands on that video of Sleepway Camp, I saw Felissa and the character of Angela kind of in the same position that I was in. Is that no matter how much I kept to myself, there people always found a way to make me feel bad about myself. And and Sleepaway Camp became kind of a fantasy for me because at that time I really wished that, like Angela, I could kill my bullies, but it never went past the the fantasy of it. But I told myself and my friend, that girl is so beautiful. I'm going to get her. I'm going to get her. And she was 12 in the movie, and I was 12 when I watched it. So before the internet, I tried to track her down. I got a hold of I found out she lived in New York because that's where the movie was filmed. And I looked through almost every New York yellow pages, white pages, and looking under the name Rose, trying to find Felissa Rose. Thank God her name was so unique that you knew if you found one Felissa Rose, it was going to be her. Well, there were no Felissas and there were no Roses because her last name is Esposito. So years go by, I start thinking about it more. Then the internet comes around, and there's somewhat of a Jeff Hayes, who was like a major Sleepaway Camp nut. He got together a reunion and reunited the cast, and they were planning to form the ideas of a fourth picture because Robert Hiltzik wanted to get back into doing a new film, and because of all of the tremendous support that reunion got, it was one of the first horror movie reunions once the internet started up, and it was they got together and there were lines out the door. Now I couldn't make it there at that time because I was on tour. So what I did was I somehow I got my manager at the time. She got me a copy of one of the. I was going to. I was auditioning for the role of the cook. I think his name was Rand. No, not Randy. Um, the cook in Sleepaway Camp 4
The name
was.
slipping me, but I know who you're. I'm picturing the guy. I know who you're
All right.
talking about.
So I had the sides of his lines, and I made an audition video. His name's Mickey. That's right, Mickey. I made an audition video to get the role of Mickey because I wanted to go out there, and I sent a tape and nobody saw it. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be ignored here. Okay. So I had my manager call up the production um, office of the movie. And basically, I said, I want to come to that set. And I had really no reason to demand that. But, my manager at the time, she was very persuasive. She could make almost anything happen. So As soon as I called the production office, whoever answered the phone said some crazy guy from a band called CKY wants to come out to the set. And somebody that worked on the movie said, "Are you fucking kidding me? Somebody from CKY wants to show up here?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, who's that?" And they're like, "Oh my God, you got to get him out here. They're so awesome. They're such an awesome band." Next thing I knew, I was on a flight to New Jersey or New York. It was kind of New York, New Jersey. And as casually as I could, I waited for Felissa to come out, and we immediately connected. The rest of the band was there. They wanted us to do a cameo in the film, and Jonathan Tiersten, who played Ricky, said to Felicity, he's like, "Wait till you see the singer. Wait till you see that guy." So she came out dressed. She had this maroon hat, and she had this really nice coat, and she just had these heels, and she walked around like, fuck, like it was just magical. And the footage from that DVD was the first day I met her, and like the whole time I'm picking her up, and you can see us. I'm picking her up and stuff. And the one thing that I did not expect was we spent the whole weekend together, but she wouldn't let me. She wasn't easy. She didn't let me get very far. Okay. And I respected that because, when you're in a band, there's never a girl that's not going to let you do what you want to do. Right. So I was very used to getting what I want and saying goodbye. But I didn't have that intention because I had sought Felissa for so long. So, we made out for a while, and we slept in the same bed that night, or the little bed from the camp. We stayed at the camp, and she, cut me off at a certain point, and then the next day, same thing. And I was just like, wow, like this woman is self-respectable. She respects herself. So after that weekend, we kissed goodbye, and she ended up moving in to my house very quickly after that. And then it wasn't till we played a show, the TLA in Philadelphia, where we happened to be in Philadelphia for the same reason. I think I might have even flown her out to the show. It wasn't until that night that we I don't know how you would say it
I think we all can pick up what you're putting down.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So very quickly after that, we decided to live together. We were both partiers, very big partiers. So the beginning of the relationship was a little rocky because of, how much we like to party. And how, like, in a relationship, when you're drinking, you're having a good time, sometimes it could go either way. You could have so much fun, you end up doing so many fun things where it can get ugly. But then that kind of settled down. We decided we want to have kids right away. Then once she got pregnant with Bianca, we eloped and got married before anybody found out that had happened before. And then I was on tour for months, came home for one night, and then Lola came 9 months later. And then I finally got my boy, Thomas. I delivered him myself, which was a really cool experience.
Wow.
So, yeah. And we've been together almost coming up to 20 years. In 2023, it'll be 20 years.
Deron, when you tell me this story, it's pretty remarkable. It's not lost on you how insane this is, right? How you met one of your childhood, not heroes isn't the word, but a character from a movie that you related to it's I can't fathom that. As a fan, it blows my mind.
I know I think it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of confidence. And I didn't really have a lot of confidence until I moved to Westchester, where I kind of developed my like a new set of friends because I didn't have many in New Jersey, and I just wanted to kind of reset my social life, you know, because I had an older brother that made things difficult for me until he moved off to college. You know, he would, you know, very rarely, you know, give me support. Like if somebody wanted to beat me up, or he would sometimes, you know, be pretty nasty to me. And he's actually a really funny guy, but I haven't spoken to him in over a decade because I don't think that he used to tell me that I was never going to make it in this business, and I never ever had a doubt that I wouldn't. And I just think that if people have the talent and they believe in themselves, there's nothing you can't accomplish as long as your goals are not possible. Like, you can't say, "Oh, I hope tomorrow I grow up and I've started to grow wings. Soon I'll be able to fly." That's not possible. Okay, but yeah, finding somebody and insinuating yourself into anything, you can make anything happen as long as you approach it in a professional way, in a mature way. Um, you can get to be around anyone you want, you know, and that's just the way I've always been.
I'd be remiss not to ask you, because my viewers will kill me if I don't ask you what your thoughts actually are on Return to Sleepaway Camp, the movie.
I I like it. I like it a lot. I think that I don't, without any spoilers, I think that if if you didn't know what was lurking secretly in those scenes, it's a huge payoff. I think that distribution, I think it was supposed to get a theatrical release, but the distribution fell through, so it only ended up on DVD. But we all thought it was going to
Yeah.
be in theaters, and um,
Yeah.
it should have been. Now, I know a lot of people find the obnoxious character, um, annoying. You know, the heavyset kid who, you know, your ass stinks. You know, all that shit. That kind of gets on everybody's nerves. But I mean, it's kind of the personality of the film and that character, where you're supposed to believe that he's the one who's doing all these things, and again being bullied very badly. But the problem here is that he deserves to be bullied because he's a fucking pain in the ass, right? So it's hard to sympathize with him, and I think that his character ends up being one of the reasons why people don't enjoy that movie much. But I also think that people had expectations for the fourth one that weren't met because it had been so long since the Sleepaway Camp sequel had happened. And I think that people were disappointed because they thought it was going to go a different way. But as a fan of the entire series, I think it's perfect. It's the perfect follow up to the first one. It has its acting problems, you know. It has some pretty, you know, strange editing choices, but I think it's great. I think it's great. And nobody knew that she was in the movie until the very end, but she was in the film the whole time. So.
Yeah, you know, Deron, I just recently, when I got this, the quick story, this isn't my interview, this is yours interview, but I'll tell this. There's a video store near me that's still open called National Video, and it's like a Blockbuster competitor, and they sell movies, and they had this copy there. And so that led me to believe that this copy had been sitting in there it was a for sale copy, because, you know, they'll sell movies and rent movies. Well, this movie was in there, and it had to have been in there since at least 10 years. So, because, you know, it's pretty sought after now in the horror community, because God knows it's out of print, and Magnet won't do a Blu-ray for it or anything. But I reviewed the movie probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I know I brought some people to the film, and I actually talk about you in the review because I'm like, guys, I'm watching the special features and Darren Miller's in it. So just a crazy set of circumstances, because that was when I got the idea. I was like, I need to reach out to Deron to tell this story. So suffice to say, though, of course you've had to have seen parts 2 and 3, but the first one, would you say that's your favorite Sleepaway Camp? Taking away Felissa from it, just the movies, is the first one still your favorite because of the relatability you have to the character of Angela?
It really angers me when I read reviews of Sleepaway Camp, and they're pretty much unanimously negative, and they call it a Friday the 13th ripoff, and I don't see any Friday the 13th in that at all. Now, I would consider The Burning and other classic films like that and Madman to be Friday the 13th ripoffs, but the fact that this is a summer camp, which is a pretty typical place to have a slasher setting, with kids, like children, underage children that end up getting killed. And then, you know, the shock ending that surprises everybody is definitely makes it the king or queen of the Sleepaway Camp franchise. Now, part 2 and 3, I rented and was kind of initially shocked that they didn't have Felissa Rose in them, and I didn't know why, but I found out later. I tell her all the time, you should have done 2 and 3, but she had already enrolled herself into NYU, and she didn't want to do them. So they got Pamela Springsteen, who is hilarious in those films. And they have such a unique humor that every time somebody's over and I play the movies, they never laugh. And I'm like, how can you not laugh at that? You know? And it's just like, there's a humor to part 2 and 3 that I just think is funny. Like the way Angela looks at people when she decides in her head that they're definitely going to die, when she rolls her eyes when somebody says something, you know, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And you can't tell if she's a good person or a bad person, and that's very rare. And even though they don't really have any continuity, they're not really technically sequels, because they don't bring back anybody from the first one, but they stand on their own. So if we're talking about the Sleepaway Camp series, I would say that 2 and 3 are the best in their part of stuff, but I don't consider them sequels, just like I don't consider Halloween 3 a sequel. And I know everybody hates Halloween 3 because they're all asking, where's Michael Myers? And they say, this movie sucked. There was no Michael Myers. Well, there isn't supposed to be Michael Myers. You can't hate a movie because you didn't know that it wasn't about Michael Myers. But Halloween 3 is a great movie, and I love that movie. So I would say Halloween 3 is an awesome movie, but I wouldn't say it's the best Halloween movie, but it stands on its own, so it can be its own best movie. And that's how I view Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3. I don't include them with the original and part 4. So I would say the first one is the best, and the sequels that aren't really sequels are also the best. I like 3 a little bit more than 2 because it's got more humor in it, and I like Angela's attitude and her alias of Maria Nicastro and how she ends up looking exactly like the girl in the beginning. And she gets hit by a truck, and you can see people standing watching her hit this woman with a truck, but nobody cares. It's just, I love that kind of stuff. Now, there's the kind of stuff that's not really possible, but they're also not scary movies. I don't consider them horror movies. I just consider them black humor movies that most people don't think are funny, but I can watch them over and over and crack up every single time. So I guess I would say that the worst one is probably the 4th one. But there's also one in between there, that bootleg thing that somebody tried to do, like Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor, and it was total bootleg, and it sucked. And I don't know, that guy was trying to compete with Robert Hiltzik because nobody knew who owned the rights to Sleepaway Camp. They didn't know if it was Michael Simpson who did 2 and 3 or if it was Robert Hiltzik that owned the Sleepaway Camp name. So there was kind of a competition where Michael Simpson was never going to win that. So everybody wanted Robert Hiltzik to do the sequel. And there was a lot of delays, and there was a lot of scheduling conflicts for the 4th one, and, you know, financial issues with the budget and production. And It took a long time after it was filmed to come out. I think it came out in 2008, and we did it in
Yes.
2003. So
I wasn't planning on asking you this, but because I know my audience will lynch me if I don't ask this, because you, unfortunately, I have a bad feeling you're going to say, I'm sorry, I don't know. But if anybody could possibly know, I would have a feeling it would be you or Felissa. In the convention world, obviously, your wife is very prominent in the conventions. She comes to Texas Frightmare. I've yet to have the chance to meet her at one yet because of COVID and everything. But the great white whale in the world of horror conventions is Pamela Springsteen. Have you or asked your wife, or do either of you guys know why she is completely non-existent in that world? Why she won't? Okay, go ahead. I have a feeling you might know something.
Pamela Springsteen is Bruce Springsteen's kid sister. Okay? And we know that Bruce Springsteen is very famous and very prominent. Okay? So Pamela Springsteen, not necessarily with the help of her brother, but because of her name, and you know, a lot of the people in Sleepway Camp 2 are siblings of more famous actors, like the Estevez sister. So Pamela Springsteen wanted to break out into Hollywood, and she wanted to be an actress, and she started to show up in 80s sitcoms like The Facts of Life, and she did what's that movie? She had a small cheerleading part in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and she was offered Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, which were filming at the same time, and she took the roles. She wasn't paid very well, as far as I know, but I think that there was some kind of issue between her and Michael Simpson that she wasn't very comfortable with. I don't know if it was really a Harvey Weinstein thing, or I don't even know if it was Michael Simpson. It could have been somebody else. But she, by the time they got around to doing Sleepaway Camp 3, I think she had it, and she finished the film. She enjoyed doing the second one, but by the third one, I think she was just over it. She had it. She started to develop a huge interest in photography. That was her dream, was to become a photographer. She gave up on Hollywood and LA. She gave up her acting, and she became a very, very successful photographer. She shot album covers for Tears for Fears, got countless album covers. She shot everybody. Okay. And she even, at one point, she was doing headshots because a friend of mine said, I went and got my headshot shot today. For, you know, headshots are these pictures that you put on your resume and you send them out to agents and stuff. I don't know if that still goes on because everything's digital now. But Pamela Springsteen was still out in LA at the time. She did my friend's headshot. And I was like, whoa, like, can you take me back there? I want to kind of meet her. But I was afraid because I figured it was just too much. Like, it wasn't, I don't think it would be fair to her for me to want to get information about those movies out of her when I know she didn't want to talk about it. So she became a very famous photographer. Time went on. She started working with Bruce. She started ending up on stage and doing shows with her brother, Bruce Springsteen. And I think that she's just, it's something, you know, we all have things in the past that we do that just make us cringe. And most of them aren't on film. And I think that she viewed the films as unsuccessful. I don't think that she thought she was good in them, although she was. And she's not a fan of horror, and she certainly doesn't need, it's not, you know, necessary for her to have to be with her fan base. She's not still in that industry. She hasn't done a movie since then. So for her to be asked to do a convention for two movies she's not proud of, And to do a convention for money that she doesn't need, she just says no way. Every time she is asked to appear at a convention, it's kind of like Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis hates horror films, and she won't show up for conventions, although she did one. And if you watch the video of her doing the convention, she makes it very clear that, oh, I'm having the best time. You guys are so great, but I'm never doing this again. And it's like, well, if you're having such a great time, she says things like, I would never in my life, except for tonight, allow people this much access to me. And that's what rich celebrities say. They don't want to acknowledge their fan base, especially when it's a part of their past. Jamie Lee Curtis wants to think that she's not known for horror, but yet she keeps accepting horror roles because that's her legacy. That's what she started doing. She was in 6 slasher films in 2 years. That's where she started off, but she tends to be more proud of her work and Trading Places and True Lies. I mean, she's always talking about True Lies, and no fan in horror or a fan of hers from her horror years give a shit about Trading Places and True Lies. But that's what she always talks about: True Lies, True Lies, True Lies. People are asking her about Prom Night, and she just makes a quick answer and then it's on to the next thing. But she doesn't need the money to go out and talk to her fans. You know what I mean? She has no reason to waste her time with that. She sees it as a waste of time. And I think that Pamela Springsteen has no interest in meeting Sleepaway Camp fans at all. She doesn't have to. She doesn't want to talk about that shit. She's over it. It was so long ago. She has no relation to those films. I doubt she's even seen them. And it's not her thing. I mean, her brother's Bruce Springsteen. The Springsteen family is just, they're loaded. I mean, they're very wealthy, and I don't know and she's probably gotten very wealthy off of her photography because she has an endless amount in her portfolio of everybody that she's shot. And she is a great photographer. And you can go on YouTube and find a very recent interview with her doing like a Facebook Live thing where she shows different photos that she's taken over the years. So you can go on YouTube and put in Pamela Springsteen. She still looks really good. I think she looks better than she did in the movies. And she's very sweet. And I'm sure that the people that were watching her live had plenty of Sleepaway Camp comments, but she did not mention a one. She didn't say anything like, don't ask me about it. She ignored all those questions and pretty much just talked about photography. I'm sure she's much better well known in that field. That's my Pam Springsteen story.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that, Deron. I mean, you've put a lot of things to bed, a lot of speculation. Some people have said that Bruce has refused to let her do anything.
Yeah, I'm sure. I don't think if he even knows about it, or I don't think I can see him, I think that if she ever said, people are coming after me about those old movies I did, and maybe her brother or someone in her family said, why bother? I mean, you don't need to do that. And, a lot of people, you'd be amazed, a lot of celebrities, like in bands and movies and that, have no interest in meeting their fans at all. Complete opposite. And so is Felissa.
Absolutely.
And it's not about money. It's not about money. It's about wanting to hear stories about, like, I always get messages about how my music has changed people's lives. And, I have grown up so long since, the early 2000s, where I kind of started to take my success for granted. And as much as I tried to be available for our fans, I was just in a different state of mind. I mean, I did my best, but I caused so much trouble. I should have been arrested hundreds of times for things that me and that band did. We were reckless, We were destructive, both self-destructive and outwardly destructive, violent, overindulged, and completely toxic and intoxicated. And at that time, it was necessary because touring was an uncomfortable thing for me. It was out of my comfort zone. It was, even though I loved being on stage, and I've only blown 2 shows, in those 15 years, but I was able to to drink lots of alcohol and still carry a show and still be able to do it. But there are 2 times when it didn't go so well. I don't think that that's a very bad average. I think that's a pretty good ratio. But I started to get to the point where I said, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be dead. I'm either going to go to jail, I'm going to hurt somebody, somebody's going to hurt me, and my life will be over. And then to have kids and starting to become a little domesticated, I didn't want my kids to grow up without their dad. Now, not to say, and this is absolutely true, being a dad has not softened me one bit, aside from the self-destruction. I still am every bit as edgy as I used to be, but I do it more sober now than I still, I love to vape. I love to have a drink once in a while. I love to do party things and have a good time and talk shit. And, I'm still me, but I had to stop with the excessive self-destruction, because when you throw up blood every morning and you expect that to happen every morning, it kind of tells you it's time to stop.
So at this point, Deron's phone was dying. He had to go. We are planning a part 2 interview where we talk about his new band, 96 Bitter Beings, and all the great music those guys have coming for us. Be sure to check out their album, Camp Pain, on all streaming platforms. I just want to say thank you, Deron, for talking about how you met your beautiful wife, Felissa Rose, the star of Sleepway Camp 1 and Return to Sleepway Camp, among other great horror films, and talking about your horror collection and all things horror. I really appreciate it. You've been a hero of mine for a long time. What a great interview. For those of you who watch this interview, I appreciate it. Be sure to stick around as we get to part 2 very soon. I'll let you guys know when that happens.